I do have the pleasure of introducing Ben Newman. I'm excited to actually introduce Ben and watch him talk. I've known Ben for 15 years on a personal level and known of his countless accolades and achievements, but really have actually never seen him give a talk. So I'm very excited. Ben is really sort of an amazing guy in terms of his accomplishments. He is a mental conditioning coach and works with some of the greatest professional sports athletes in the NFL, NBA, PGA, MLB, UFC, and then NCAA. And I think he'll give you some tidbits about his work with Alabama and Nick Saban. He's also a peak performance coach, and I had to ask him what that means. But he works with some of the top 1% of financial advisors globally in terms of how to be at their peak performance and perform at the top level here. He's also, as we're going to see here just shortly, an internationally renowned speaker, and he's been selected as one of the top 5 mindset and performance coaches in the entire world. He's an author, has 2 best-selling books, The Standard and Uncommon Leadership. And I think what you won't see on his bio, or if you look him up on the internet, is Ben's really a very generous person and is deeply involved in philanthropy and has given a lot back to the community in St. Louis as a whole. And I know Ben would tell you this himself, that he would cite his family as his greatest achievement. And I think he would prioritize that and relationships over anything that he does. He's got a wonderful wife, Amy, and 2 beautiful children, Isaac and daughter, Kennedy. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Ben Newman.
Good afternoon. Zach, thank you so much for that introduction. It's hard to believe how fast time goes. We talked about this opportunity a long time ago as well, and it's amazing how fast it's come, and I couldn't be more excited to have an opportunity to be with all of you, knowing that you are a room that when I think about each and every single one of you, I think you are the standard. You understand sacrifice. You understand discipline. You understand what it means to have a very small margin of error in your work and how you have intentional focus in everything that you do. Through our time together today, I believe that you'll learn that those are the types of individuals that I love having the opportunity to work with, because you show up in a certain way to make an impact and to do your work. Now, one thing I do have to share with you that happened backstage before I came on stage, which was a huge honor for me. And Zach, I don't know if you arranged this, but it was very special. Michelle Taylor, I walked to the back to get mic'd up, and she says, "Dr. Newman, are you ready?" And I thought, Zach arranged for me to have an honorary doctorate for this opportunity. So Zach, I greatly appreciate it. It's really amazing and unexpected. I would never take an honor like that because I haven't been through what you've been through. I haven't been through the level of sacrifice. I've been able to perform at a very high level, and it's been a blessing to work with some of the highest performers to ever walk the face of the earth in business and in sports. But some of the times when I hear some of what Zach goes through, or stories about what he shares with all of you, times when he's on call, when there's emergencies, you know what I'm talking about. There's times where it's sacrifice away from your families. There's things that I could never begin to understand. And I love talking about intentional focus with high performers, but there's something special about all of you because you're the standard. And in thinking about the standard that you all have created in what you do, there are some parallels to some individuals that I've worked with that I believe are worth discussing today. And I want to paint a picture for each and every single one of you about the impact that you make. It was really an honor for me to hear my dear friend Eric Wood speak this morning. You know, it's amazing that there's a sport and spine panel, and then here Eric stands before all of you because of all of your work to help him make the right decision to not go play football again so that he could stand before all of you. And amazing to be able to hear his story and the impact that you have made on his life. So I want to talk about impact today that you all make, but maybe discuss it in a way that you haven't thought about prior to today. And in order to paint that picture, I want to start with an example of another individual that I had the blessing of working with that was also recognized as the standard in his work. He just retired a few weeks ago, so I figured it would be appropriate to honor him with all of you. At one point several years ago, Forbes magazine recognized him as the number 11 leader in the world. Now, he's a football coach, but he was recognized as the number 11 leader in the world because he was the standard. Coach Nick Saban at the University of Alabama. I had the opportunity to work for Coach Saban, to be on his payroll for 5 years and 2 national championships. I never took that opportunity lightly. And I can share with you, when I say the standard at Alabama, or I think about the standard that you all set, I think about the environment that I walked to that first time that I showed up to Tuscaloosa. That first time that I didn't know if I was going to be like one of those other coaches that they bring in on the mental side, that in the middle of the talk, they stop and they throw the person out. That was the strict standard that Coach Saban had. Like, if you couldn't deliver, they would literally ask you to leave. There was one time I almost watched him take somebody off the stage. So to stay there for 5 years was incredible, knowing that the first opportunity I ever had, I showed up in 2017 for this interview. I walk into the Malmore football complex in Tuscaloosa, and as I walked in, you could just feel the expectation. You could feel that environment was different. Let me give you an example. It'd be the example of one of you having a conversation with somebody at some place in the hospital or in a surgery center, and you're having fun and you're having a conversation, but then you move into the surgery room. And the moment you move into that surgery room and they start to wash your hands and you put your scrubs on, it's different, isn't it? There's a different expectation. There's no joking around in that room. There have been times where I've tried to blow up Dr. Ray's cell phone, because we are good buddies, maybe to talk about Iowa or football or whatever it might be. And he's not answering his phone. Somebody's answering it for him, saying, Dr. Ray is in surgery. He'll have to call you later. Or Dr. Ray's not going to be able to make it to meet you this afternoon. Because it's different when you walk into that surgery room. It was the same for me. You walk into that Malmore Athletic Complex, it was just different. There was a standard. And it was a standard where there was an expectation that you showed up in a certain way. And the amazing thing was, from that first day until the 5 years that I spent, the 2 national championships, the amazing relationships, is that my life forever changed in terms of how I focused in everything that I do. And there were 2 lessons that I learned from Coach Saban that I want to share with all of you. And had you ever come to a Alabama football practice with me and stood on the sideline, these are things that he would always say. He would say, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. He would say, we don't do things until we get them right. We do things until we can't get them wrong. And when I think about the work that you do, it's the same. The way you do one thing is the way. You cannot walk into a surgery room and choose to be sloppy that day. There's a level of focus and a standard that you must maintain. You have to learn and understand and adapt and evolve. Think about the level of innovation. Look at the size of the room to our left, to my left. Think about innovation. Think about change. Think about everything that goes on in your industry. You have to innovate and you have to evolve. It's the same thing Coach Saban had to do at Alabama. You look at old teams where he won championships, and Coach Saban, it was more of a defensive team. When I showed up in 2017, it was more of an offensive team. He had to innovate and evolve with the change of the times. Just like all of you, when things change, you have to adapt and evolve to maintain the intentional focus, to deliver the care, and to be able to help people the way that you know you can better than anybody else in the world, because you are the standard. That's the way it was at Alabama. And there was a way that everybody showed up. I love asking people the question, how do you show up after you win? When I work with high performers, it's one of my favorite questions. How do you show up after you win? Think about when you do something, you help a patient. You have to show up with that same level of intentional focus. There's that standard that you set. You can't get complacent in your work. Dr. Potts, if we get complacent in our work, we're going to have problems. You have to maintain the standard. You get complacent in your work at Alabama, they're going to ask you to leave and hit the transfer portal. It's not acceptable. Now, one of the things that I think is incredible about the work that you do, and maybe you have thought about this, maybe you haven't, but I want to share a different perspective about the impact that you make. You see, I love paying attention to the details. So one of the things that I love, and of course being a speaker, I've been doing this for 18 years. It's a long time. So I've been able to travel the world. I've been able to speak in 9 different countries. I think Zach's actually spoken in more countries than me. But I always love our conversations where he's invited to go speak somewhere around the world. And what I think to myself when I hear that is, Zach, can you believe the impact you have the opportunity to go make on a young man or a young woman on another country about things that you've done or you've developed to help them be a better surgeon, to help them do their work better, to help them increase the standard in what they do. It's amazing impact. You get to teach people to be their best. Coach Saban would do the same with the players. And just as you would go and travel the world, or individuals that you'll hear speak here at this conference, and maybe there's something they say that changes how you think and changes how you show up. It was the same for Coach Saban. But what's amazing is when people receive the message and then they choose to go change and carry on the standard. There's a young man by the name of Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is now the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. I had the blessing of working with Jalen at the University of Alabama. Interesting that our topic today is the standard. I wrote a book called The Standard that came out last year. In that book, I talk about this story that I'm going to share with you about Jalen Hurts and how he showed up because of how Coach Saban taught him to lead. So all the way back at the time in Alabama, I remember there was a time where there was a young rookie, and that rookie was making mistakes, and he was showing up late, and we're standing in the weight room. Even though I live in St. Louis, Missouri, I would travel to Alabama about 15 times a year to be in person, to speak to the team, to do things one-on-one. When players were struggling, I would come in and help them through that struggle so that their mindsets would be locked in to attack their plays on a Saturday. And I remember I walked in, and Jalen Hurts was all the way on the other side of the weight room, and there was a rookie who had been making these mistakes and showing up late. Well, you have to push plates when you do things wrong. And so you would put a 45-pound plate, and all of a sudden you see this player pushing this plate around the weight room. He stops, and Jalen Hurts walks all the way from one side of the weight room, comes over to the other side of the weight room. Jalen Hurts had already lost his job to a guy by the name of Tua Tagovailoa, who's now the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. So here's a player who had lost his starting job, and he's all the way on the other side of the room. He sees somebody not doing something up to the standard, and he decides to stop doing his work. Everybody knew that he was going to transfer after that season, and so he doesn't have to come over, but he comes over, and I'm standing about like this far away, and I hear him say, "This is not the way we do things here. This is not the standard at Alabama." And he walks back to the other side of the room. Last year, during off-season training, I've also done work for the Philadelphia Eagles for several years. This year, season didn't end the way we wanted the season to end. The year before, I was with them at the Super Bowl. Game didn't end the way we wanted it to end, but you still have to show up with the standard. So now it's the off-season. I'm there last off-season. I'm back. Here's Jalen Hurts. How do you show up after you win? I'm invited for this off-season training session. We're in the weight room. If you can picture this, there were 90 players on the roster because it was the off-season. It's a bigger roster. The weight room is absolutely packed. There's hardly any room to walk. Jalen Hurts had just signed a $250 million contract, more money than he will ever spend in his lifetime. He's a smart kid that does things the right way. He'll never spend that money. And Jalen Hurts was wearing a weight vest that day while they were lifting, the only one on the team doing it, because his standard was higher because he was the leader. He learned that from Coach Saban. So think of the impact that Coach Saban had made. The first work that he was doing leg extensions, and then he was doing kettlebell pushes on a different side of the gym. So he finishes with his leg curls. He does a light sprint like this over to the there was no room to run, but he was doing a light sprint like this to show everybody else what it means to do a little bit extra. The standard. He learned that at Alabama with Coach Saban. He became a leader at Alabama, national champion. He then takes it to the Philadelphia Eagles where he takes them to a Super Bowl. I will tell you, he will win a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. And he's maintained that standard. Just like all of you, Think of the individuals that you have the opportunity to speak to, the individuals you help with a fellowship, the individuals that you help with research, the individuals you show them the way, and then one day they go on to make an impact and change how they do their work because of you. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. We don't do things until we get them right. We do things until we can't get them wrong. There's a standard that you all show up with that makes you the best in the world at what you do. There was a standard that Coach Saban showed up with that made him the very best in the world to ever do what he does. So I don't want to raise of hands. I don't want to nod of heads. But have you thought about the fact you make that kind of an impact? So I actually want to ask you to be even more intentional and lean in with your opportunity to teach the next generation, not just you, because that's how you navigate the future. And navigate the future can't just be a crafty name of the conference, can it, Dr. Potts? Navigate the future means we have to look at things a different way and innovate and evolve, just like Coach Saban. And maybe not accept that the standard is the way that it is. Constantly see how we can make the standard better. That is real impact in life. And I believe that's your opportunity. Think about impact differently. Because somebody could come and they could be part of a fellowship with you for a long period of time, a short period of time, and maybe they go somewhere else and you never hear from them again. But when they put their hands on somebody, after they walk into that environment where their hands are scrubbed and now somebody's watching them, and they put on that gown and their physician's assistant makes a phone call to their friend, they're going to show up in that way and make an impact because of what they learned from you. They put their hands like you put your hands on a patient that trusts you. You know, one of the unique things that I loved about what Eric Wood shared, impact. So I wanted you to think about impact in your leadership, the standard in which you show up with, but how that standard creates impact. But then I also want you to think about impact with every individual patient that you have the opportunity to make a difference with. Eric Wood's ability to stand on the stage rather than be in a wheelchair to deliver his message. Think about that. That was one decision away. One decision away. One play from him delivering that speech in a wheelchair rather than somebody giving me the information that was hard to understand. You cannot play the game again. He had an opportunity to say thank you to all of you today. I've had the opportunity to do speeches with individuals from the medical community at hospitals. One of my favorite talks I ever gave in my life was 2008 when I was invited to go speak at the Boston Medical Center. It was the first time they had ever brought in a leader to speak from outside of the hospital. The reason why I had received that invitation was because my mother had received care at the Boston Medical Center for amyloidosis when I was a little boy. My mother in 1983 was diagnosed with amyloidosis. I'm sure many of you know what it is. For those of you that don't, we all have amyloids in our muscles. If you have an excess of amyloids, you have a disease called amyloidosis. We're in 1983. There was no cure. Even with the research stations that our family has donated because of our appreciation for the work that doctors like you do, even when people now look in the Janet Fishman Newman Research Station at the Boston Medical Center in honor of my mom, because every speech, every coaching opportunity, every sideline that I stand on in the fall where I'm paid through a contract with a university, money from those opportunities always go to research to do things in honor of my mother's name, because there's still no cure for amyloidosis. Now, I do those things because of how hard you all work and because I may not understand the sacrifice that you make, the times that you've been pulled away from your family. I know the impact that you have on families' lives. My mother had a journal that she kept when she was dying. Our house was a tough house to grow up in. My parents were divorced when I was 6 months old. I never knew my parents together. My mom, her last year living, we had 24-hour nursing care in our house. I was a 7-year-old boy. My mother would stand at the end of, at one point in time was a little TV room in her bedroom, and she would look down this long hallway, knowing that at the end of the hallway was the dining room table. And whether it took one nurse or two nurses, she'd take her IV stand and put one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. And she'd sit at the head of that dining room table every single night, and she'd look over at my older brother, Drew, and say, "Drew, how was your day at school?" And then she would pan over to the left, and she'd look me dead square in the eyes and say, "Honey, how was your day at school?" You notice I got the honey because I was the younger son? My mother had peace of mind, and she shared it in her journal, which is the only valuable asset that I have in our safe at home. There's no jewelry, there's no championship rings. The only thing that's in the safe at my house is my mother's journal, where she talked about her nurses and she talked about her doctors. And my mother came to the dining room table, even though she was dealing with amyloidosis, nothing that maybe any of you have ever or will in your work care for a patient with amyloidosis. Maybe many of you have. But even if you haven't, I know the mindset she had because of the work and the peace of mind that you provide for patients, just like my mom, who may not have the opportunity like Eric would to come and stand tall on this stage and to say thank you. So for all those patients, the impact that you make, whether you have the opportunity to hear the thank you from a little boy just like me, know that you are making an impact. There are little girls at home that were just like me, that 7-year-old boy whose mom passed 11 days before his 8th birthday, where the pen of her life and her story was passed on to me to tell it. So when I have an opportunity that Dr. Ray gives me, which I am so grateful, to talk about your story and your journal and your life and your chapters, I might be a little more intense than some of the other speakers you've had here, but you're going to get my all because your impact means that much. Continue to be the standard in everything that you do. Continue to make the sacrifice. Continue to innovate. Continue to evolve. Continue to be the example. Continue to make an impact as you lead and navigate the future of the next generation of incredible physicians making a difference in this world. And don't ever forget or lose sight of the impact that you make on every single patient and the little boys and little girls like me who are watching how their moms come to that dinner table and the mindset that they bring, which give them the ability to have perspective in their lives. That, my friends, is impact. That is legacy. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with all